Thanks for joining me on episode 495 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Joel Hallbaker, teacher, speaker, and author of Inverted Leadership. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to lead through confident humility is key, and one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mater.
But if instead you're using some of that money and you're not doing this, you're delaying gratification, you're saying no to yourself today, and because of that, you're able to put money into savings, you're able to put money into investments, you're able to put money away, and the compound interest begins to pay you money. It's a fascinating thing, but there comes a time.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's episode about impacting the world through stewarding your treasures, I talk with you about why, when it comes to money, these words are dangerous. The difference between what we talked about in Tuesday's episode and these words, and why, if you recognize this, this can be one of the most powerful forces in the universe.
As we talk about stewarding your treasures, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without costing yourself an extra dime? Turns out you can. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show. If you enjoy the show when you're ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon.
Earlier this week, when we were talking about time on Wednesday, we were talking about this idea of doing it now. Stop saying someday, stop saying when I get around to it or when I'm ready, and instead actually take action. And today we're going to talk a little bit about a similar concept, the concept of I want it now, and how this can work against you. See, when it comes to your money, this idea of I want it now can actually hurt you because you end up buying things that you don't need, leveraging yourself into debt so that you can get stuff now before you really are ready for it, before you actually have the money for it. And instead, you leverage future income for things today. This idea of I want it now, no matter what. I just want it, so I deserve it. I work hard, so I have to have it. Whether it's a new car, whether it's a new computer, whether it's a new TV, whether it's some fancy new tech toy or whatever it is, this idea of not being able to delay gratification, not being able to say no to yourself today so that you can get in a better position later can be a dangerous thing when it comes to your money. So unlike what we were talking about earlier this week, where not taking action is what holds you back, in this case, taking action does harm you. But it's a different frame. If you think about it, Tuesday we were talking about taking action to grow something, to move in a positive direction. Here we're talking about when you take action and it moves you backwards. See, that's what debt does, because it isn't buying freedom. It's buying pleasure today and doing it by sacrificing your freedom in the future. You know, it's one thing if you have an asset and have a little bit of debt against it, something like a house where you have a mortgage. You know, that's still not great, but it's not terrible because you're buying something that becomes worth more. But that's not usually what we do with this I want it now mentality. Usually the I want it now mentality is used to buy things that go away. It's used to go out to eat on debt and finance a steak dinner over 30 months. It's used to buy the newest toy that you really can live without. You justify it. You'll say things like, I can't live without a new phone, but that's not really true. The old phone you have probably works just fine. Or buying a phone that's not the newest and greatest would still do the job that you need it to do. So this isn't really what we're talking about here. We're talking about, I want it now because you're throwing a temper tantrum like a 2-year-old in the candy aisle of the store. This is totally different than the someday maybe attitude that we were talking about on Wednesday. This concept of delayed gratification, this concept of being able to say no to yourself today so that you get something better in the future, can be one of the most powerful forces you have for making an impact. Because all too often what happens is person after person after person after person, what they do is they leverage their future to get some pleasure today. And they end up spiraling downward and sacrificing their future for the moment. And that's never a good thing. If instead you learn to be able to say no to yourself, you learn to be able to say no today, you can get a lot more in the future. It's about living in a way that's counterculture, that's a little different. See, the culture today says, buy it now, get it now, finance, 90 days, same as cash, 6 easy payments. But all of those things are simply an excuse. They're an excuse to buy today what you can't afford and sacrifice your future. There's a reason that the same companies that sell debt have the largest buildings in a city, because they're making money off of you. See, compound interest, paying interest, works one of two ways. If you borrow money from someone else, you pay them back more money with interest, right? But if instead you're using some of that money and you're not doing this, you're delaying gratification, you're saying no to yourself today, and because of that, you're able to put money into savings, you're able to put money into investments, you're able to put money away, and the compound interest begins to pay you money. It's a fascinating thing, but there comes a time where you can look up and the money that you have in investments made more money last year than you did. And when that happens, it's kind of cool. It's an interesting moment in time because now your money is working for you. But to get to that point, you have to learn to delay gratification. You have to learn to stop saying, I want it now, and to begin to say, it's okay that I don't have it now because I want more in the future. Instead of leveraging your future for your present, you begin to leverage your present for your future. And you'd be amazed at how quickly this can happen. I've seen people get out of tremendous amount of debt in a very short amount of time, begin to put money into retirement, begin to focus on the right things, get their business up and running, get their job up and running, get focused on what they need to do, and suddenly be in a completely different place in about a year to 2 years and look back and not even believe that they were able to do it. I've had clients pay off hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and put hundreds of thousands of dollars into savings and into investments and get in a much better position. All because they learned to stop saying, I want it now, and to say, it's okay to say no to myself now for my future. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of treasures,
You can sign up for our Treasures Tips by going to inspiredstewardship.com/treasures or text in the U.S. 44222 Treasures Tips. And we'll send you 5 weeks of our best tips on stewarding your treasures. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.